Welcome to Anomicon. Anomicon is a virtual conference on everything anomalous, live streaming on YouTube, Twitter, X, and on Twitch. Join us on September 1st and 2nd as over 24 speakers give presentations on everything from UFOs and aliens to ghosts and the paranormal, from Bigfoot and lake monsters to witchcraft and the occult. It's all happening at Anomicon, and most importantly, it's completely free. To learn more about our speakers and the event, visit anomicon.com. We'll see you on September 1st and 2nd for Anomicon.
This is Somewhere in the Skies with Ryan Sprague.
Hey Ryan, my name is Jason. I just wanted to share some experiences that I had. I'll be honest, I don't know how to categorize this. I don't know if you would like to call it ghostly paranormal, or if it was something that was more alien or something like that. When I was younger, maybe, I would say maybe 10 years old, I grew up in a house that was built in 1881. Sometimes I'd fall asleep in my parents' bed. Now, this house was basically 2 rooms stacked on top of each other. It was a really small house. So we had the bottom floor was the living room, and then had an attached kitchen, and there was a bedroom that was added on some years before we moved in. So the footprint of the house is only maybe 25 by 25. The whole upstairs was my parents' bedroom, and the only bathroom was upstairs above the kitchen off of their bedroom. This will be a little more important in a minute here. Sometimes I would fall asleep in my parents' bed watching TV, and we would always have my cousins coming over to spend the night or to hang out, and we kept a crib mattress over in the side of their bed to put the kids down whenever they would fall asleep. Well, one night I fell asleep in the bed, and instead of carrying me all the way back downstairs to my room that was attached to the living room, my dad put me down on the crib mattress on the floor next to my mom's side of the bed. I woke up in the middle of the night, rolled over, and my mom was sitting on the floor next to me, kind of was with her legs crossed, and I reached over and like, "Hey Mom, how's it going?" You know, I was surprised to see her there. My hand went right through whatever it was there. I just kind of rolled over and basically pretended to be asleep. I have no idea what that was. I mean, I certainly wouldn't call that alien by any stretch. But sometime later, maybe 2 years later, I was downstairs in my room, had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, went through the living room, up the stairs, and diagonally across the bedroom, standing in that same spot, next to my mom's nightstand, I saw something standing there. I don't know really how to describe it. I couldn't make out detail because it was dark, and partially because I wear glasses, but I didn't have my glasses on since I was just going to the bathroom, so I could swear that I saw something grayish, something whitish that kind of had some contrast against the darkness. I don't know if it was slightly glowing or luminescent, or if it was just that much brighter than the surrounding environment that it just kind of stood out. But I pretended that I didn't see it, and I kept moving off to my left, went in the bathroom, hurried up and shut the door, and did my best not to have a panic attack, basically, because I was really certain that I saw something there. After a little while, I did my business. I left the light on, which I normally wouldn't do because I don't want to wake my parents up when I open the door. Left the light on, cracked the door open, didn't see anything out there. I let the light shine right on where I saw this thing, and there was nothing there. So I shut the light off, bolted out of the bathroom, ran down the stairs, dove into my bed. That was it. When I was 14, I was just about to turn 14, we moved into a newer house that was built maybe in the 50s or so. I had pretty much the run of the basement. It was pretty well finished. There was a living room sized room, a couple of bedrooms that were smaller, bathroom, so that was kind of my domain down there. One night I was asleep, I was dreaming, and I remember not much of the dream, but I kept hearing some voice whispering my name. And at first I thought it was in my dream. It's kind of like how when you're watching TV and you're half asleep, the voices can kind of infiltrate your dream and actually influence your dream and become part of it sometimes. It started off like that, where I heard somebody whisper my voice, and I remember in my dream looking around like, who's calling for me? And it happened a couple more times, maybe 3 or 4 times. And each time it happened, I would wake up a little bit more because I couldn't figure out where this whisper was coming from. And then I finally figured out that, I'm dreaming. It must be my dad trying to wake me up. So I didn't open my eyes or anything. I just I woke up finally. And even as I was waking up, I heard it one more time. So I'm like, what? Like, I really thought it was my dad because it sounded like my dad. And nothing replied. There was nothing there. I didn't look around. I know I heard this thing, and it was multiple times. It wasn't something that was just in my head. At least I didn't want to think that it was anything real, but I was convinced that I actually heard this. But I just turned over. I stayed awake until morning because I was that scared. And you know how if there's somebody standing behind you, you can just tell. I don't know if it's the acoustics in the room or the energy they give off or whatever you want to call it, where you can always tell that there's somebody standing right next to you, if there is. I felt that in my room, but I didn't want to acknowledge it. I didn't want it to think that I was aware of it. I was just terrified. So I stayed up until morning, and finally, when the sun was up, I had the guts to roll over and look, and there was nothing there. So I convinced myself, it was part of your dream, it was in your head. I didn't tell anybody about it. Well, I had friends that would come over. I lived right across the street from the school, so I had one friend especially who would spend the night more often than not. And he would just walk over to go to school with me in the morning. Well, he fell asleep in my bed once. This was maybe a month or 2 later from me hearing the initial whispering. He fell asleep in my bed, so I didn't want to disturb him. I figured I'd just let him sleep there. So I went upstairs into the main level of the house and slept in the living room on the couch. Well, the next morning, go down there to, sit at my computer and hang out, and he's up. And he starts telling me about a voice that's whispering my name that woke him up. And he said that he looked over into the corner of my room and he saw this figure that had some contrast with the surrounding darkness that was, he couldn't tell if it was faintly luminescent or if it was just white enough that it stood out that much. And as he was telling me this, I felt all the blood just rush from my face. It was just hearing him recount what happened to me without him having any prior knowledge of it was so strange and so terrifying. So, but that's, as far as direct experiences, that's all I've got. I will say that I've had, and the rest of this probably goes along with just having a passing interest in the paranormal, aliens, that kind of thing. Even when I was a kid in elementary school, I'd be looking for those kinds of books in the library and checking them out and stuff. So that there may be some bias there or something that I'm seeing through that lens. But I would have dreams once in a while that, I'm being abducted or carried away by a couple of aliens or something like that, like down a hallway or something. And I would have these frequently enough that it was really starting to, I got past the point where I was scared and it was becoming annoying. And one night I had a dream where I was in my childhood house, back in the original house that was built in the 1800s. And in the kitchen there was a gray, definitely a gray. There was no question about it. He was standing at the far end of the kitchen and he was just standing there staring at me. And I just got so angry. Like, I've never felt so much rage in my life up to that point. And I just start swearing at this thing, like, leave me the F alone. Get out of here. Get out of my life. I don't want to see you. Stop coming around. The dream ended, and I never had any more dreams like that afterward. Now, maybe that was my subconscious way of dealing with some latent fears I had or something like that, but it was interesting from my perspective that all of that sort of thing stopped after that night. But that's about all I have. Hopefully it's at least entertaining, but it's been something that's that shared experience of having the whisper saying my name between me and my friend without any sort of hinting or prior knowledge on his part. That kind of solidified for me that there are definitely things out there that we don't fully understand or not fully aware of.
Hey Ryan, my name's Matt. I'm 38 years old, and I live on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. But if you might be able to tell from my slightly obnoxious accent, I didn't grow up here. I grew up on Long Island. The event I'm going to tell you about takes place in 2003. I was 17 years old. This was about the end of the summer, probably end of July, beginning of August. Just as it was starting to get cool out, I probably had the day off at Taco Bell. I was with my buddy Sean. I don't think he had a job at the time. He joined the Marines right after high school, and I lost touch with him. But on this day, it was pretty much like every other day. We just were hanging out, doing what we did. We were just going back and forth between my mom's condo and his mom's apartment. He lived in a place called Artist Lake in Middle Island. They had this little duck lake in front of it, I guess, and a sod farm, I guess you would say, behind it, which was weird because it seemed out of place. There was a school behind it. On one side is another school on the other side, a big road on the other side, and this apartment complex, a couple apartment complexes flanking the other side of it. And it just seemed like weird. It was just this massive lawn. A sod farm is basically where people get grass. Like, have you ever seen somebody get a new lawn put in where they just roll out the grass? That's what this was. It was just a big, giant, lush lawn with a tiny little house in, I guess, the northeast corner of it. And we would just hang out on the other corner and just do what we did. We smoked weed. We were 17. That's what we did. If you're the type of person who says, well, your story is not credible anymore because you weren't completely sober, let me just tell you right now, we were smoking the worst weed in the world. It was 2003, and it was garbage brick weed. And believe me, we were barely high at all. But if that's enough for you to duck out of the story and that makes it totally not credible, then fine, I understand. Whatever. But I'm going to be honest. That's what we were doing out there. We weren't just walking dogs or doing our homework. We were hanging out, smoking doobies. But anyway, so we're sitting on this field. I see this little red dot just shoot out from behind his head in the sky. And I'm like, what the hell was that? Bro, look at this. So we get up, we start looking around. There's a couple of them. I remember at least two of them, little red dots. Just seemed like little red lights just flying around, and it's like, that was weird enough. But then he goes, look, dude, look on the, and he points me to the other side of the field. There's this big green football shaped thing with little red diamonds going through it, and it's just sitting there. It's just not moving. It's just hung in the sky like the fucking moon, just sitting there. It was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I was just getting all... I mean, Sean was like the cool guy. He never got excited about anything. He was just standing there smirking, just going, yeah, I've seen all sorts of stuff in this field. It's weird, right? And I'm just losing my mind. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen. I felt like it knew we were there. I can't explain this part. This makes me sound insane. But I felt like it knew we were there. It was totally cool with it. It was almost like giggling along with us, like, yeah, isn't this cool? Like, it's... I'll never be able to explain that part. There's a lot of this story I can't explain. But I'll just stick to the stuff I can report observationally. This thing was green, glowing green with little red dots in the middle. I can't tell how big it was or how far it was because there was nothing to really judge distance. It was just above the tree line. If it was close to the edge of the tree line, I'd say it was about the size of a minivan. If it was far and up and far away from that tree line, it might have been the size of a school bus. It was very, very big, and I'm sure the red dots flying around had something to do with it. I don't think it was a coincidence. They must have come together. I don't know. But we sat there and watched this thing for probably 30 minutes, 40 minutes, something like that. I don't know. I really lost track of the time. We were just sitting there just transfixed by this thing. At the same time, it just started becoming normal. It was so... It moved one way and then the other way, and it would just stop, and I was like, maybe it's a blimp, and I'm like, but that doesn't make sense. Blimps don't do this. Why would anyone have a blimp? It definitely wasn't a drone. It wasn't it was just the weirdest. It didn't make any kind of noise. It just hovered there and just went across the other side of the field. Now, at some point, we just kind of watched it, and eventually we heard some sort of ATVs coming, like, the sound of like four-wheelers coming. And we're like, all right, we'd never really heard anybody driving four-wheelers in that field before, but I'm not saying, it's government agents or whatever. I don't know, maybe it was just somebody driving their ATVs, but we looked over the other side of the hill coming over, and yeah, it was two people riding ATVs on the opposite side of the tree line. So we started getting a little queasy about standing there, like, maybe we should go. This might be, the owners of the sod farm. Maybe they're going to kick us out. Maybe, who knows? But before we could even think about turning around, we started hearing a helicopter coming down real loud, really low, and comes across the opposite side of the field with a spotlight shine. Now, I didn't see this helicopter. I couldn't tell, it was a private helicopter, military helicopter. And on top of this, I'm 17 years old. It's not like I'm an aviation expert. I don't know anything about helicopters. It's just a big-ass, loud helicopter shining spotlights, just flickering all over the field. And it shines it at us, and then shines away and shines back at us. And we're like, let's get out of here, man. So we turn around, we go back through this little trail. It's probably like 20 feet of woods till you get back to his apartment complex, right? Now, we get to his apartment, which isn't really far away from the end of this trail, and we turn around, we could still see this thing glowing. We could still see this thing flying around, It was still there. And we're like, we should go get some. We should get a camera. We should go. And then we're like, we're going to look insane. We don't really want to go knock on the door and be like, Mom, give us a camera. There's a UFO outside. And I don't know. I don't know why we didn't just bring her outside and tell her to look. But I don't know. When these things happen, I guess you just don't really think of all these logical things. But anyway, the weirdest thing about it is we're at in this complex, and I didn't think of this till years later, and it still bothers me. There was no one around. There was not a single person driving their car or outside or walking around. Nothing. No one was walking their dog. Nobody was hanging out smoking blunts outside. No one was driving around. Nothing. And this was an apartment complex in Long Island, and, it was maybe 10 o'clock at night, 10:30, whatever, but that wasn't anything. I mean, this place was usually busy around this time. It never made sense to me how there was not a single person that I could point to and say, hey, look at that thing in the sky. There was nobody around. I don't get it. I walked halfway back to my house before I started seeing cars on the road, before I had to cross the street. There was nobody around. And when I turned around, it was gone. And I don't know. To this day, I still don't know what that thing was. I don't know what happened. I'm not sure if it was aliens, and I only say that because that seems too simple an explanation, because everything was weird. Every single thing about that event was weird. The whole day was weird. It seemed, I really feel like there's something to this phenomena, whatever you want to call it, that is a bigger part of reality that we just don't understand. And I know I sound stupid saying that, but there's just something bigger going on that we don't get. I don't know if it's just little green men from Venus. Like, I don't know. That's too simple an explanation for what happened. Like, there was nobody around. That made no sense. That might not sound like a big deal to you, but I knew this area, and it was like you could hear a pin drop. There was not a noise. There was nothing. No one around. It made no sense. Other than the helicopter and those ATV things driving around. I didn't see anyone. It was bizarre. But anyway, that's it. That's the whole story. And if anybody could ever find Sean, let me know. I mean, I could give you his last name or whatever.
Hey everyone, Ryan Sprague here, host of Somewhere in the Skies. If you've ever thought about supporting us, we have great 2 easy options for you right now. If you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, you can click the subscribe button at the top of your Apple feed. Or you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/somewhereskies. Both of these options give you the same benefits: early access to the main show, bonus episodes and content, and priority to ask our guests your listener questions. So, to help support Somewhere in the Skies, click that subscribe button on Apple or visit patreon.com/somewhereskies. Thank you so much for your support, and keep looking up.
Hey Ryan, this is Brad. I'm a approximately 50-year-old mechanical engineer from Michigan. I've got 3 different occurrences that I was wanting to share with you. They span over quite a long period of time, so I'll go through them like in a chronological order. The first one was, I'm guessing, sometime around 1976 or so. My family's from the Upper Peninsula in Michigan, and we were driving home at night, like a Sunday night. And the trip home is you take US 2 east and then I-75 south. And that's part of the story as well. So what happened was at some point during the trip, a bright light just appeared over our car. And most of this story is from my family members that I've asked over the years, individually and together, to recreate this story. So the light appeared over our car, and my dad got out. So he pulled over, got out, looked at it. He looked. I thought it was a helicopter, but there was no noise. And then my brothers were in the back seat with me. Again, I'm too young to really remember it. I mean, it's a vague memory in my mind. But my brothers are 5 and 7 years older than me, so they have pretty clear recollection of it. And according to my brother, it just, at one point, it just shot off like diagonally extremely fast. And the interesting thing, aside from that, is as I've asked my dad, my mom, both my brothers individually over the years, none of them are clear if it happened on actually US 2 or an I-75. And again, this was mid-70s, so there's no cell phones or anything like that, or everyone had a watch. But the thing I always wanted to ask, like my dad or my mom, and I have asked, my dad's passed away now, but whether or not there was like a lost time event, like considering they can't remember which freeway it happened on. So that's something that I always thought was potentially maybe even we were abducted. Probably not. I mean, I wouldn't think so, but maybe. I don't know. So that was one of the interesting events. And again, I asked my brother within the last 6 months about this again, and I asked my mom still to this day, and all of them have a very clear recollection of this event. So it was pretty interesting. I can't imagine the amount of guts it took for my dad to get out and look at that, but I mean, back then I guess it wasn't really as widely known phenomenon. Okay, the second story I have, which to me is the most interesting because it happened to myself. So this took place approximately 1998 or 99. Don't remember exactly. This happened at my house. It was a Sunday night, probably about 9:30 p.m. And I was just outside smoking a cigar. My family, my wife, and my 2 children were in the house sleeping. Summer night, beautiful weather, calm, no clouds. We were close to an airport, and Sunday nights are usually really busy, airplane traffic, but this night there really wasn't. So my home faces south, and it's on a very wooded lot with large trees. So line of sight's not good in the sky. Straight up, yes, but on any angles, no, none whatsoever. So I'm just pacing around out front, thinking about everything I have to do the next day, and smoking a cigar, and just walking around, and just notice how quiet it was. And then just out of the blue, something flew over my head from the east to the west, and I didn't see it. What appeared to be relatively low to the ground. It didn't, I mean, I don't have anything to gauge that other than the sound it made and just the sheer speed of it. And again, I've watched thousands of planes fly over me, and this was, whatever it was moving incredibly fast. And the odd part, I never heard it approaching, but when it passed over me, so when it was heading west, as it passed, there was just the strangest sound that it made. I mean, it was something that when I heard it, I knew it was just a sound that I'd never hear again, or like, man, I'd hope to never hear again, actually. And to describe the sound, I mean, I'm not even sure how to describe it, because it was just that odd. I mean, at first I thought it was more of like a reverberation sound, but the best way to describe it, and it's something that you might hear in like a Star Wars blaster gun or something like that, or even in some of the newer Star Wars movies, just how the engine sounds are, but still nothing close to that. But that's the closest thing I can relate it to. And then I was listening to a podcast, and someone was talking about if you can manipulate space-time for travel, it causes vibrations. And then, so that made me think of this sound again. And that maybe what I heard was, it was almost an audible vibration, and it wasn't like a metal to metal vibration, not like a banging vibration, but us, like, I don't know, if air could vibrate, maybe that's what it was. So the sound, it was just so odd. I have no idea how. That's the best I can do to describe it. And it wasn't like a loud sound either. It was just a kind of a faint passing by, almost like when you hear the Jetsons introduction, and then the thing kind of buzzing by. That's what it sounded like. Just like a faint, maybe 70 decibels is about what I would guess the sound level was. So that was the occurrence. So the strangest part of it to me was, as soon as it went by, I just had a sense of extreme fear and dread. I have no idea why. I immediately just threw my cigar out into the lawn. I walked through my garage. It was an attached garage. Closed both personnel entry doors, locked them, closed my garage door, went into the back door from my house, the connecting wall. I locked that door. I locked every door and window in the house, sat in the living room by myself in fear, half expecting like some type of creature to come through break through one of the doors. That was so, I mean, even telling the story right now, the hair on my arms and stuff and neck is standing up. The fear that it instilled in me was such an odd feeling. I will never forget it, and I hope I don't hear it again. And I'm not an easily scared guy. I mean, I go up in the UP and I'll walk out into the woods at 5:30 in the morning with no flashlight or anything of that nature, and I'm not scared whatsoever. But so for this to happen to me, it was like, it was terrifying. And I don't know what it was. I don't think I'll ever know what it was. I don't think I want to know what it was, honestly. So that's the end of my second story right there. And I wish I had better information, but that's what happened, and it was really odd. But the last story I have happened in I think it was December 12th of 2023. I was down in Florida, and we went on a fishing trip. So we were just south of Tampa, a little ways, over by a place called Johns Pass. We were on the south side of Johns Pass, right on the ocean. It was about 11:30 p.m. We decided to go out, and the guys that wanted to go fishing, so we were going to go out to the ocean. So as we were walking out to the ocean, so we were close. We were a block from the ocean, and we were walking across the sand, and I just happened to look up. And when I looked up, I saw two parallel lights flying east to west. Neither was leading or trailing. They were both flying exactly the same parallel pattern and exactly in line with each other. And they were going. It was moving really fast, like an asteroid you'd see shoot across the sky. And that's what I thought it was. And then as I'm watching them, they did what the best I could call is like a helix maneuver. They crisscrossed patterns and maintained the same parallel distance, and then they were still in line with each other, and then they just disappeared. I had no idea what it was. It could have been an asteroid, but it was just, it almost looked like a military type maneuver, like if you were doing a thatch weave or something like that for an old school fighter plane, propeller plane type maneuvers. Obviously, this was at very high speed, and it was a really odd occurrence. And I did make a post on Reddit about it at one point. And there's no way I could have taken a picture because I looked at it, lasted out maybe 2-3 seconds, and it was gone. So that's the end of my last story, and I appreciate the time, and thank you very much.
Hi, Ryan, and hi, Somewhere in the Skies listeners. First of all, thanks for inviting experiencers to share their stories. I think that's a real important thing, and the more voices we have out there, the more people will take us seriously. Anyway, my name is John. I live in South Georgia in the United States, somewhere in between the Okefenokee Swamp and the Altamaha River. I'm a farm boy. I grew up milking a cow, gathering eggs, and that kind of thing. In 1980, when I was 15 years old, my father and I had a close encounter with a UFO while we were fishing on a river. We had lines out in the Satilla River, that's about an hour from the house. We put in Woodbine, Georgia. That's a little town, it's got a boat ramp, and we went upriver and we started pulling catfish. We had trot lines out. Those are long lines with multiple baited hooks, and we stretched them across the river and weight them down so they're on the bottom. And then you go back and you pull the lines and pull the fish and rebait. And you do this multiple times throughout the day and night. Well, we were doing it at night. It was the classic 2 a.m. kind of thing. And when we were pulling lines in the middle of the river, we noticed the thing, whatever it was. It was lit up. It lit up the trees around it, lit up the water under it. It was about treetop high, and it was within about 100 yards of us. What I remember seeing was intersecting planes of light. It was like blue-white light, sheets of it, but it was in the form of a four-sided pyramid that's called a tetrahedron. But like stretched on its side, kind of. It wasn't like regular, it was stretched out. And it looked to me to have occupants, at least one, and I got the impression that they were watching us as we were watching them. I haven't seen anything like it before or since. I got the impression that it was a craft, that it was under intelligent control, and that it or they were interested in me and my father, like it was watching us. There was no noise, there was no wind, and everything seemed to be still on the river. We also didn't feel any kind of fear. I don't remember feeling much, but wondering what this thing was, trying to put it somewhere in my head that I could understand it. I don't know how long we watched it. I don't know how much time passed or what really transpired during that time, but eventually it kind of moved up the river and just out of sight. And my father and I, we really didn't talk a whole lot. He was a man of few words, not really a conversationalist. We just went back to fishing. And when we got home, we told my brother and my mother about it. My brother remembers me saying it looked kind of like a triangle, but not much more than that. And as far as I remember, the family never really spoke of it again to anybody. It kind of was dropped, and I forgot about it. that memory was not there. And for a long time, I was a real skeptic about UFOs and what people claim to have seen. And I don't know why. I guess because I didn't remember that. But the memory, the weird thing about this memory was it came back a few years ago as I was watching a YouTube video, somewhere around 2020 or so. I can remember the video, and there was a phrase that someone said that seemed to trigger this memory popping up in my head. That's really a kind of a weird thing, but human memory is weird. Anyway, someone was talking about UAPs and how the only technology that would explain all 5 observables would be the control of time. And that kind of freaked me out, and the memory popped up then. And I stopped the video. I remember that. And I went inside. My father was alive at the time. I went inside and asked my dad. I said, "Do you remember a UFO we saw on the river when I was a kid?" And he said, "Yeah, now that you mention it, yes, I remember that. It was a weird thing." I said, "Yeah, did we ever talk about it much?" He said, "No, not that I remember." And then I asked him what he saw. Now, what he remembered seeing was different than what I remember seeing. I saw, like I said, a tetrahedron with maybe occupants. He saw what looked like to him an airplane fuselage with portholes, with beings inside of it looking out at us. But he also remembered the time thing and the lit up thing and the rest of it. But what he saw was different than what I saw. I've since learned that that's common if it's a kind of a real experience, if it's one of those things, whatever they are. Sometimes people see different things or experience different things standing side by side. It was just me and him, but at least he remembered it. I don't know if the memory was suppressed or buried. I do know that it's weird that when it popped back up, I started having really strange stuff happen. Like UAP activity, some paranormal activity, and that kind of thing. It's kind of a strange thing. Only within the last few years. Like I say, before that, I was kind of a skeptic, and since that memory popped up, things have been different. My worldview has shifted. I was a non-believer, and that changed a lot. I've experienced a lot in the last few years. I used to laugh at the people who claimed to be able to channel information outside of themselves. But then I started experiencing stuff like downloads myself. So I can say that the world is stranger than I can imagine. And I can also say it's really cool to be alive during this time when we have all these changes actually going on. I want to say thank you, Ryan, for the opportunity to share a bit. And I want to say blessed be, fellow travelers.
Ryan, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to tell my story. I have many, but I think this one is the most digestible and relatable. I'd rather not give my name just yet, if that's okay. I live in central New York, and I'm a spiritual medium, and I've been a paranormal investigator for almost 20 years. I would say that my stand on the paranormal is somewhat mixed, and especially when it comes to UFOs or UAPs, I'm a bit on the skeptical side, but I have seen some weird stuff, so I'm a little bit all over the place, but I try not to let my experiences color any future experiences, if you know what I mean. So my story starts on a Monday. It was a December 13th, 2021. It was early evening, probably around 6 or 6:30, and I was driving home from having my car serviced, and I was listening to a podcast, as I normally do. It was completely dark out. I remember that because it's December, and it's 6 something at night, right? So I'm very careful when I'm driving. I normally, though, when I'm driving at night, I look up at the sky. I watch the stars. as much as I can, safely. And it was a very crisp, clear evening. I remember that because I was looking at the stars and I could see them very well. And so as I'm looking, I'm driving down this road. There's nobody else on the road. And I look up in the sky just above the road in front of me, and there is a bright white light in the sky. And it wasn't really moving at first. It just sort of was drifting. And then all of a sudden, it shoots off. I can't remember which direction. I think it might have been left. But it just shot off and disappeared very quickly. And I'm thinking to myself, that definitely was not a plane. Planes don't do that. And I don't think it's a shooting star because I've never seen one do that. Also, never that low in the sky. It's always way up there, and it shoots off, and leaves a trail or something. This was definitely not that. It just seemed to appear to be sitting there when I looked at it. And it's almost as if it wanted me to see it. I don't know any other way to describe it. It was just like sitting there waiting for me. So I noticed it. It started drifting a little bit, and then all of a sudden it shot off and disappeared. And it's not like it went out of sight, right? It didn't just go until I couldn't see it anymore. It literally disappeared. And I'm sitting there going, that's weird. And it just swiped left, it was out of there. So I don't know what it was. It was just way too low to be anything natural that I can point my finger to. So seeing this, looking back on it, it was shocking to say the least. But what I really loved about it was that it felt kind of fun. And what I mean by that is it felt like kind of a game, like it was intelligent or something. I don't know why I feel this way. It just felt that way. I mean, I had to wonder if it wanted me to see it. And I mean, it was just hovering there. It was bright as it could be and very low. And it definitely felt like it knew I was there. And so I immediately went home and made a video about this for all of my social accounts so that I had a document of it for myself, right? Did I report it? No, of course not, because I know I should have, but I got busy and completely forgot about it, honestly. But this also reminded me of something else that I have seen when I was younger. I was probably about 22 or so, and when I came out of work one night, I lived in Abingdon, Virginia, and at the time, I used to be a waitress. I was working my way through college, so I worked at night. So I'm coming out of work. As I normally would have, I looked up at the sky on my way to the car because I'm a sky girl, and it was summertime. I remember that because it was incredibly clear out, and I took my time going to my car. So I look up right above my head, and I saw something very strange. It was at the height where you would see a jet or a plane or something, but I only saw green and red lights. The green lights were there, stationary, and red ones were revolving around it. So as I looked at it, I'm running through all the explanations at the time. I'm I don't hear anything, so it's not a helicopter. Could it be some kind of military craft? I don't know. This was a long time ago, so who knows? But there was no sound at all, and it was just hovering there, and the lights just kept going around. And suddenly, I remember feeling very anxious and started to worry for no apparent reason. I just got really anxious and suddenly felt like something was really, really wrong and that I needed to get out of there just immediately. So yeah, I did. I ran to my car and I rode it like I stole it out of the parking lot, and I went straight home. And I just remember that it was almost palpable in its creepiness. I can still feel that sensation today. And I don't know what happened, but something was definitely there.
The Somewhere in the Skies podcast is part of the LIONSGATE Sound Network. Please take a moment to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever possible. Thank you for listening.